Okay, so in this video I'm going to go over some basic techniques on how to connect to a SQL server using Visual Studio and C Sharp. I'm going to be creating a very basic um, Visual Studio project called a console application project, and in order to do that I'm first going to open Visual Studio, and then I'm going to do File, New, and then Project, and I'm going to select Console Application. And what this is going to be is it's going to be called Test Query App, and I'm just going to store it in the folder Test Query App, and I'm just going to call it Test Query App. And so once I click OK, after having selected the console application, the project will be created. And at that point, I'll need to do a couple of things. The first thing I need to do is I need to make a change to a setting on the project. In order to do that, I right click on this project and go to Properties, and I want to change this target framework to Target.NET Framework 4.0. And I click yes, that I do want to change that. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the program. Now, one thing to mention, there's a couple of things you need to add in order to access the SQL server. The first thing to do is to add a using statement for system.data and another for system.data.sql client. The data holds the it's the namespace that holds a bunch of data-related classes and things. And one of them is the data set. We're going to be using that. The SQL client actually holds the SQL connection class, which we'll be using as well. So first thing we're going to do is data set, and then we're just going to instantiate, create a new data set object. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to create a SQL connection. Okay, in order to do that, we're going to use a using statement. And the using statement accomplishes something very important. I want to take a moment to explain that. This actually uses what's called unmanaged resources, and so we need to actually dispose of it. We need to actually get rid of it, make sure the memory is freed, and we do that by using the using statement that implicitly will call the dispose method on that particular class, the SQL connection class. Okay, and then we're going to set the connection string. I'm going to set it, I'm setting some security options. Integrated security is equals to SSPI, and data source is going to equal localhost, and the initial catalog is going to equal a database that I think I showed before, which was, I'm going to pick this one, SCOM test underscore MSTRM. So the initial catalog is going to be SCOM test underscore MSTRM. Okay, and so I'm setting the connection string, and I'm going to close this Solution Explorer. I'm setting the connection string so that way it'll know which database to connect to, as well as the server and the security type. So I'm also now going to use the SQL command, and that's going to allow me to actually execute a SQL command, SQL command. I'm setting the connection in this line. We're setting the connection here. And that'll allow us to, basically what that allows us to do is to tell the command what connection we're related to, or what we're set to. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is set up a command text, and I'm going to do a very basic query. It's going to query from the account base table. Okay, and I'm setting that up there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do SQL data adapter. We're going to create the data adapter so we can actually execute an operation that will fill that data set that we created earlier. Okay, and at the end of this, what we're going to do is we're going to set a breakpoint here, and I'm going to show you that it indeed does work. Now there shouldn't be any rows on this table, so what we're going to do is we're going to print out the number of rows returned, because there's no real data in this database. I wanted to just kind of, show the basic structure of this, so I'm going to do Okay, and we're going to do a console.readline. What I'm basically doing is I'm outputting some text, and then I'm going to pause here to allow the console to wait for an input. So this way we can see that something happened. So we actually retrieved one row, so I think that that row, I may have actually entered something in after all. Let me see here. Actually, I did create an account. So anyway, there's some data here, and you can't see it in this example because this is just the structure in C#. But if I wanted to grab the account ID, I could say like this, and I retrieved that account ID. So I was able to pull the number of rows as well as retrieve one of the account IDs. And so this example, what we've just gone over is we've basically created a simple console application. We've instantiated, well, one thing we added some using statements here. So we have additional namespaces added to the project. And then we created a very basic code example here by doing a few different steps. The first thing we do is the data set, create an instance of that, and then we go through this process of using the SQL connection, setting up the connection string, using the SQL command, and setting the connection to the connection that we're creating, and then the command text, and then we're using the SQL data adapter to fill the data set that we instantiated up here, and filling it up. And then now we're writing out this message so that we can show that we've retrieved the account ID, and here we've displayed the number of rows. And then of course finally we're going to be waiting for input. So that's just a very basic example, and I'll be creating more interesting examples in later videos. Thanks.